Star Wars 7x7, episode 2426. One of the big mysteries as far as Star Wars storytelling goes has been, what would it look like after the end of the Skywalker Saga? Well, it's been more than a year since The Rise of Skywalker hit theaters, and some trends, some patterns are beginning to emerge, and we're going to take a look at some of those starting this week. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So, a few trends, I think, now that we've had a year and change to consider the direction of Lucasfilm and Star Wars storytelling after the Skywalker Saga ended, a few trends seem to be emerging as far as that storytelling goes, and so we're going to take a few days to examine those trends. The first one that we're going to talk about today is the massive interconnected multimedia storytelling initiative. And there seem to be a couple of ways that this is being handled. But first, let's talk about the ones that have been announced so far. In April of 2019 at Celebration Chicago, the first inklings of what has come to be known as the High Republic Storytelling Initiative were announced. It was called Project Luminous at the time, and it was revealed during a writers' roundtable at Celebration Chicago. So that was April of 2019. In 2020, in December, we had the Disney Investor Day, and we already had The Mandalorian Season 1 in the books, and Season 2 was well underway. And during that Investor Day situation, we got the announcement about the Ahsoka series and about the Rangers of the New Republic series, and the way it was described was that The Mandalorian and those two new series, along with potentially something else that had yet to be announced, would end up building up to one big event. And of course, at the end of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, we found out that there would be a Book of Boba Fett TV series as well, so presumably this is one that they were talking about. Maybe there's going to be more. Possible, of course. But the point is that we have multiple live-action series on Disney Plus that are all going to tie in together to one big, as yet undiscussed event. And just a couple of days, weeks ago, gosh, time flying already in 2021, we got the announcement about the War of the Bounty Hunters big crossover event that is spanning the entirety of the Star Wars comics verse. So that's three examples right there of massive, interconnected, multimedia storytelling initiatives. And I guess you could say that maybe the comics one right now, the War of the Bounty Hunters thing, is not multimedia as yet. Although, considering the way that things like Operation Cinder, for example, as we were just talking about, have worked their way into other media, right? This was the first live action mention of it in the episode of The Mandalorian that featured Migs Mayfield, the Believer, that was chapter 15, right? So stuff percolates up into these other media outlets. And so you can imagine a scenario rather easily where whatever is happening in this War of the Bounty Hunters initiative, something in there is going to end up getting referenced in this Book of Boba Fett series. Probably the High Republic example is the one best suited for the idea of it being multimedia, because it was books and comics to begin with, but it has already also gone to short stories in Star Wars Insider magazine, to virtual reality in Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, and it's eventually going to live action with the series The Acolyte. And as far as The Mandalorian and Ahsoka and Rangers of the New Republic and the Book of Boba Fett and what they might be building up to, well, I think possibly the presumption is that it's also going to be a live-action Disney Plus limited series of some kind. You know, I'm kind of put in mind of what Marvel did on Netflix with Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and Iron Fist, and it all building up into the Defenders series potentially. But there's also certainly the possibility that it could go to a movie situation as well. And wouldn't that be fascinating if that's the thing that Kevin Feige was working on, which, you know, kind of makes sense in its way, because if anybody has experience with these sort of cinematic universe building situations, which is pretty much what's happening with the Mandoverse, as we like to call it around here, then yeah, he's a pretty qualified guy. He's kind of done a little cinematic universe building himself. So yeah, I don't have any inside information on that or anything, but just something fascinating to consider. And it's certainly the kind of world building within the Mandalorian time space, that space within the canon timeline, that seems to be happening. Now, I mentioned that, maybe we've heard everything about the live action stuff that's all going to build together, and maybe we haven't. And it seems like the thing that we haven't heard about yet that maybe we could hear about down the line is something involving Grand Admiral Thrawn. We had the thing with Ahsoka during her episode in season 2 of The Mandalorian where she is clearly looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn, and maybe that's what will be happening in her series. We still don't have any information on it other than it exists, and we don't know whether it's going to take place before or after the events of her appearance in The Mandalorian. But that wild card is still out there, along with Ezra Bridger and what his fate is. So yeah, there's still a lot to learn. But in 3 consecutive years, we have had 3 different massive interconnected multimedia stories announced for us. And it does seem like this is one of the ways that Lucasfilm is approaching storytelling in the post-Skywalker Saga era. Now, I'd love to hear what you think about this approach to storytelling as it seems to be unfolding, and if there are any other kinds of interconnected stories you would love to see told. So please check in on wherever you see posts for this episode at facebook.com/SW7X7 or the YouTube video at youtube.com/SW7X7. And that is going to do it for today's episode of the show. It just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.